This is really for people who want to focus on private company training. And the definition of that really is like any kind of like a college to train their staff or their alumni, their professors, the teachers there. Or if you want to do private company training, anything from, for example, training the HR department or speaking at an employee event where you can actually go on and be there for a day, half day, do your training virtually, where you're training some, either all or a division of the employees. So a lot of times, like Catherine we were just discussing, is that you want to target companies that have, 20 or more. I would say 20 would be the minimum that you want to target for when you're pulling leads from whatever database you use. So you want to make sure that you are getting that many, that many employees at the company. So it makes it, a better chance of them bringing you in to do some training. So once you have, your leads are pulled, you kind of know what, your private training topic is. What you want to do is you want to have two different scripts for private company training. You want to have something you can email to people. Because if you get somebody on the phone and they're like, hey, I can't talk right now, but please send me some information, where it's kind of like a cookie cutter verbiage that you can use and customize for each individual company. And then I always, and I've been doing this for so many years, but I still have some type of script in front of me when I do calls. Because if you don't do that, if you have something else happen, somebody walks into your office, or if you're working at home and your child comes in and asks you a question, somebody picks up the phone and says hello, it can throw you off balance. So it's always a great idea to have an actual script in front of you. Now, your calling script and even your email script, they be brief. I always recommend no more than a paragraph and a half, maybe two. You don't want to, and excuse the expression, but you don't want to word vomit on people. Your main goal when you first call them is going to be to, hey, this is what I do. Are you interested in learning more? Those two things, those are your only goals. Tell them what you do. Are they interested in learning more? And then you can take the next step. Your email script should really be general, meaning you have your, what topic you're training on, what you can do, and then always put underneath, so that topic summary 3 to 5 takeaway format is perfect. Whatever you're teaching at an association, even though it's only an hour, you can expand that topic. I always say whatever topic you have, like with my body language class, I can do that. I have it shortened to do an hour where people are getting value out of that hour. I have it where I can do it for a half day, 4 hours, or a full day, meaning 8 hours. And I can even do it longer than that if need be, depending upon how detailed they want to get. So make sure that you have, that in mind. You don't have to have the content completely prepared. Find out what they're needing and then customize from there. So for example, if I were going to call into a company, there, the 5 main things you want to have: who you are and what you do, the reason for your call. And we do have some sample calling scripts in the backend content. I think I shared that last time. But why you're calling, and do they want to learn more? Usually what I do at that point is I let them know, look, I'm going to email you over some information on my topic and how I help people. I try to get them to answer a few other questions so I can customize that more. So come up with 4 or 5 questions that you're like, hey, I really would like to have the answer to this before I move further in the conversation with this particular company. Now, the reason you want to do that is because, number one, I'll use Bria as an example. So with Bria's topic, because she is teaching people how to, to embrace everyone, the synopsis of it is embracing everyone. If you have a disability, kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes, expressing empathy. So with that being said, that's a great topic for a company-wide topic, really, as a whole. So if her mom's talking to an HR department and she's telling them about Bria's topic, She might want to ask, tell me, have you had issues in the past? Do you have a lot of employees that have trouble relating to others who have a disability? Do you have a procedure in place? These are perfectly acceptable questions. Now, sometimes they're going to have an answer for you, and sometimes they might say, well, actually, that's kind of classified. We don't discuss that, which is fine. But have a couple of questions that you'd like to know. So even with myself, like with body language, I usually want to know, what department are you having the most trouble with communication? Is it your sales department? Are you finding that your, customer service, you're getting a lot of complaints? Is there a lot of turnover in general? Do you find that your managers are not staying there longer than the employees, or vice versa? Because that gives me an idea that somewhere along the line, there is some type of communication issue, and body language does become a part of that. So the more I know, the better I can help them and put that in my information proposal that I send over. So think of 5 questions that you would really like to have the answer to. They may not apply to everybody. That's why I always say have 5. So you'll have at least 1 or 2 that you can ask and get an answer to before you actually send over the email information. So make sure you have that somewhere in your script. So as you're talking to them, you can take notes. I do recommend having like a separate notepad, just something that you can jot down notes while you're talking to them. Don't think that you're going to remember everything. Again, I always go back to this example. Everybody's busy. We have so many things going on in our lives that, again, if you have someone who comes in or somebody knocks at your door, or like today, I kept having to mute my phone during our Zoom audition because the leaf blowers were outside. And even though I have the doors and windows shut, you can still hear it because it just sounds like a buzzsaw. And it's distracting. So, you're not always going to remember everything people say unless you write it down. So have something you can write, information down with. Ask questions when you have them on the phone, if they're open, if they can talk. That's why usually in my script, I always put, if I call and I say, hi, can I speak with Susie Bird? Oh, hi, Susie, this is Carrie Heaps calling with Book Speak Repeat. My company does blah, blah, blah. Did I catch you at a good time? Do you have a second to talk? I always ask that because number 1, it's courteous. Number 2, if they are in the middle of something, and give them the chance to say, look, I'm writing up an email, or can you give me a minute, or let me put you on hold, or let them finish up what they're doing, and then they can come back and give you their full attention. And also too, it lets them know you respect their time. And we've all had this happen where people have called us, as business owners, and they just die. This is so-and-so calling from Grant Cardone's company. Let me ask you something. How many times do you have blah, 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 blah? And it's like, what? No, wait a minute. I'm in the middle of something. I thought you were someone else. So it's always good to be courteous and ask that. And if they say, look, this is not a good time. Oh, okay. Always say, is it okay if I give you a call back later on tomorrow or this afternoon, or can I call you back tomorrow? What works better for you? Give them 2 choices, but always ask them and set up that next step. Always be setting up your next step, no matter what you do in this process. It's kind of our job to move it along. So that is something else that I always tell everybody to put that in. So, if they can talk to you, great. Go ahead and dive into it, and be, again, be short and sweet with your script. So when you're, if you're reading it, even if you read it verbatim, it just sounds like you're just talking to them. So that's another thing that you can do, is make it conversational. I have before printed up a script and I've read it out loud, which sounds a little nutty, but I want to see how it rolls off my tongue. Does it sound sincere? Does it sound like I'm reading from a script? Do I need to add in a couple of words, or, hey, how are you doing today? It doesn't have to be perfect English at all. It needs to be something that's conversational, that you feel comfortable with, but always have something written out. So make sure you have that. Now, when you go on and you talk to them, you have information there, there is some interest, you got some answers to your question, or to at least one question. When you write up the email, again, have your topic, what it is, outline what it is that you are doing, outline what they get, meaning, okay, Clearly you charge for private company training. We all do. What do they get? Are they getting just you in person for a half day? Are they getting follow-up meetings, like virtual ones? Like, for example, with me, if I come and speak to a company and I'm doing body language training or follow-up, whatever, they, and they're interested in me coming for a half day. So they get me in person for 4 days, or I'm sorry, 4 hours, that day. A day of their choice. And what I do afterwards, they're also getting, I have handouts that they get, of course, and then we do a 30, 60, and 90-day virtual review, meaning at the end of 30 days, I'm going to check back in, see how things are going, who has questions. I usually do that with the person who hires me, or, if it's going to be like a Monday morning meeting for that particular group, I'll come in on the Monday morning meeting and just check in, see how, how is everybody doing? How is everyone? And I do this at a 30, 60, and 90-day time period. And the reason I do that is because so many of us that go in and do private company training, we're there for that 4 hours, and then people forget a week later what it's unfortunate, but it's true, no matter who it is, they will forget a lot of that training. So it's always good to have a review. The other thing that they get is I also have for my private, for me, for Carrie Heaps, the speaker, back-end content with recordings and videos that have been pre-done for whatever topic, whether it's the follow-up topic or body language. So I let the company, like, for example, if it's a sales team that they want me to train, and there's 20 people on the sales team, all 20 of them have access to that back-end content for 90 days. It's included in the pricing. There's no additional work for me to do because I've already produced that content. It's just video content. So they can go back and they can watch that if they'd like. I can give a report to their manager saying, okay, it looks like over this 90-day time period, Katie, Susie, and Becky logged in several different times, and all of these other people did not. So you may want to continue, like, for example, if they decide, hey, they clearly got value out of this, we want them to still have access to that content, then I give them a discount moving forward for like the monthly fee to have access to that. But it's automatically included in what they pay for. So I outline all of that. So it's not just, hey, you have me for 4 hours and that's it. You've got me for 4 hours. We're going to do a 30, 60, 90-day review. I detail what's involved with that. And then I detail, this is the value you're getting. All 20 of your sales reps have access to this back-end content. At the end of 90 days, if you want all of them to continue, you will get a discounted rate since the company's paying for it. So I outline everything that they're getting, and I do that by bullet point. And again, I don't make this long. You don't want it where when they print it out, it's 3 pages. You want to keep it short and sweet, no more than a full page, if at all possible. So, but make sure that they realize, okay, this is the investment and this is the value that we're getting for it. Because it makes that decision so much more easier for them, and it's easier for them to take it to their manager or whoever to say, hey, we are, this is a great deal, let's do this, because everything's outlined. So I have all of that in the email. I close it out and I always say, let me know if you have any questions. You can contact me via phone or email. But I'm also, as I said to you on the phone, I'm going to follow up with you next week, and I look forward to talking again on Tuesday. Okay. So again, I reinforce that, hey, I've set up the next step. Okay. So you want to have that in your email as well. Now, if you decide, once you've done you've called them, you've sent out the email, then you're going to start your follow-up process. So a lot of everybody has access to the Speaker Success Journal. Now that Speaker Success Journal, if you print out just a couple of pages of that, it's a 90-day success journal, but it has it where you can put down, the meeting planner's name and their phone number when you have to follow up with them. I encourage you to do the same thing with these private company training events, because the more people you have on that list to call each day, the better. So make sure that you put down, you sent them an email on Friday, you're going to be following up with them on Tuesday. So it just helps to keep things in line. Now, if you have, for example, you want to keep that separate, then just use like a notepad, this is one that I've used too, because again, I'm so big on color coding. I think a lot of you can probably see this, but I'll color code mine when I'm calling. Like yellow for me means that they responded to an email, or they've responded, they called me back. Pink or red is not interested, which basically just means not now. Blue, anything highlighted in blue means they want to call back later, meaning in a month or 2 months or 3 months. And then green means, hey, this is pretty much a done deal. We've sold it. So when you are going through and you are actually writing in, people's names, you want your sheets to look like this, multicolored, where there's green, there's pink, there's blue, a multitude of colors. So that way, this helps you track your results as well. So again, it doesn't have to be fancy. This is something I did on a notepad because it's a project I'm keeping separate from everything else that I'm working on. So that's also an idea. You want to have a way, you need to have some type of follow-up system. So you have the Speaker Success Journal. If you don't want to use that, the leads that you pull from these databases are going to be in Excel anyway. When you download them, you could keep it in Excel, and you can highlight those cells and rows in Excel in different colors as well. You don't have to use what I have. I mean, some people, they like pink, so they associate pink with success. So they might want to use that as hey, yeah, I sold this company. They might want to use green for a different reason. Use what you feel comfortable with, whatever color coding system resonates with you. There's no right way to do this. There's no wrong way. The only wrong way is if you don't keep track of it, because as you all saw last week or the week before last, when we did our other class, when we're pulling leads from these databases, you can pull 200 at a time, and you can pull more than that, but that's just each time you log in and you're downloading leads. So you could get, for example, if you have 500 people on your list, that's going to get to be, kind of overwhelming. So you want to have some type of follow-up system. But again, use something that works for you. And there's nothing wrong with experimenting. I mean, if you want to try it in Excel and you don't like it, you want to go to a pen and paper format, by all means, go ahead and do that. Do what works for you. But as long as you're tracking your results, you're going to start to see how long it takes for you to close a private company training deal. Average typically is 3 months. Sometimes it happens quicker than that, but I'm finding that's the average, not just for myself, but for pretty much everybody else out there. Sometimes it's longer. I think what really drives a lot of that is how much you're charging for the private company training. We've talked a little bit about rates. Clearly, private company training, you need to set your own rate. Companies typically have a budget where they're not like associations where they're more on the nonprofit side, or they have a limited budget. Most companies, if you're targeting the right, the ones that have, at least 20 or more employees, are going to have a budget for training. So if your fee is going to be $5,000 for a half day, $7,500 for a full day, or $7,500 for a half and $10,000 for a full day, and then also make sure you have a rate for virtual. Okay, so this is also something that you can put in your follow-up email to them. So if you tell them, hey, I'm, Susie, I'm going to call you Tuesday at around 3 o'clock your time. I look forward to talking with you then. Make sure you have that on your calendar. You are calling them Tuesday at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it is. Believe it or not, and I got a compliment yesterday and today on how I'm very diligent and punctual with that, because so many people are not. So again, if you do that, if you do what you say you're going to do, the little things like that, it's going to make you stand out above everybody else, which seems so weird to me. But that's just the world we live in today. So that is, your phone script and your follow-up script via email are the two things you want to start working on. Our next call, definitely, if you want to write something up, bring those or email them to me, and I can take a look at them for you. If you'd like me to, I'm happy to do that. Anybody that ever wants to role play, I'm always happy to do that on these calls as well. Because what I would like to get everybody in the habit of doing is, okay, great, I've pulled my leads, I've got my script. I want to make some calls before our next Thursday night call so I can report my results, or I can, hey, I'm encompassing this issue, what should I do? Because that's kind of like the next thing too, is that you need to have, and I do this as well, the rebuttals. And we have some sample ones, I think, in the back end content as well. I showed everybody where that was. But every single person on this call has a different private training topic, and who they're going to pitch that to will be different as well. So each of us will get a different rebuttal, meaning you may call someone and they're like, oh, I'm not interested. That's pretty standard. But they might be, well, how much do you charge? It could be a budgeting issue. It could be, oh, we really haven't had any need for that, or we haven't really seen anything that would warrant having someone come in to talk about whatever topic you're talking on. So there's a variety of those. And the only way you're going to really find out what the standard objections are is once you get on the phone and you start calling and you're talking to people. So it kind of gets the ball rolling with that. And once you start making those calls and you start talking to people, then you're going to find out, kind of where they're at. But standard ones are usually money. We don't have a budget for that, which they usually do. I think it's just an excuse. Or they just come out and say, well, I'm really not interested. So we'll talk about rebuttals the next time too. But I do want to open it up. Does anybody have any questions about writing their own script, or has anybody tried it yet? Or, what, because I do know it can be intimidating hopping on the phone. One way that I like to get over that is once I have my leads pulled, I have my script ready. And I still face that too, even for as much as I do this, I have kind of like some hesitancy there. So what I like to do is I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to make 10 calls right now and just see what happens. So I start going down the list. I start calling. If I get a voicemail, I'll leave one message and I'll mark that, LBM. And if I get somebody on the phone and they're like, yeah, send over some information. Okay, great. So this is good. So I'm starting to build up that momentum. I'm making another 10 calls. What I have done before too, and anybody can do this, if you just take like a little piece of scratch paper, what I like to do is, and I think they probably have a more formal name to it, but I guess you would call them tick marks. So like if I set a goal for myself that I want to make 40 calls, I did this the other day, I made 40 phone calls. And I keep track of them by just, one call, 2 calls, like how many times did I pick up the phone and dialed? I want to do 40 dials or make 40 phone calls. If I make 40 phone calls, more than likely, I'm going to probably talk to 4 or 5 decision makers, maybe more. Out of those 4 or 5, 2 are going to be, no, I'm not interested, or they might hang up on me. But the other 2 or 3 are probably going to be like, yeah, why don't you send me over what you have? I'd like to take a look. So you're also going to find out what your numbers are. So for every 10 calls you make, you're going to be talking to 1 or 2 people who can actually make this decision. And one of them will say, yeah, send something over. Let's continue the conversation. So by doing this, it kind of gets you in that habit. It's sort of like, it's like a little goal you set for yourself. I always recommend when you're making calls, try to chisel out an hour in your schedule that you're just going to sit down uninterrupted and make calls, or 30 minutes, whatever you want to do, or 15. It's totally up to you. But I would suggest carving out that time, and during that 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, all you're doing is making phone calls. Okay, you're just picking up the phone and you're dialing. And you're going to get somebody on the phone, and that's when the process just starts. And it can be intimidating. Everybody's like, gosh, I don't want to bug anybody. But again, I go back to what I've always said. Everybody on this call has an important message to share. There are companies out there who need your training. There's someone that works for them that needs to hear what you have to say. So you have to look at it that way. If you're not calling, if you're not telling them about it, not letting them know, then you're doing a disservice. If you call and let them know, hey, I do this and I'm great, let me come in and talk to your employees, and they say no, okay, well then that It's the buck stops with them. It's on them, but you've done your part by getting the word out. It's the same thing too with the call for speakers. If you're not filling those forms out, then obviously, those people, there's not a chance of you getting picked. And then that eliminates the chance of you going to that event and talking and touching somebody's life that's in the audience. This is really no different. So if you kind of look at it from that standpoint, it kind of takes the I don't want to say fear, but the anxiety around getting on the phone. But in all my years of doing this, I have to say it's actually pretty boring. I've never had anything interesting happen to me, like somebody yelling at me or anything like that. Probably the most you're going to get is somebody's just going to be like, hey, I'm not interested, and they hang up. And that's it. Someone had shared with me one time a video, and if I can find it, it's on YouTube, but it's so funny. I laughed so hard, I cried. It was so funny. But they were like, does this ever happen to you? Because I'm on the phone so much. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, let me look. And basically it was these two guys that worked at this big company. It was a tech company, I think. And anyway, they got tired of people calling in, marketing their services. So these guys decided to make up some really crazy hold music and put these, like, pretending to be putting people on hold. And basically it's the one guy singing crazy lyrics and like banging on part of his desk. And then he would come back on like every 2 minutes going, yeah, I don't know what's keeping him. And what do you think of our hold music? I actually produced that and I'm selling the CD. I mean, it's so funny. But again, for the most part, it's boring. Nothing like, nothing interesting like that ever happens. So, yeah, anyway, Catherine had a question. So for someone just starting out, would you suggest creating/writing a half-day presentation? But honestly, the presentations that you have, I would suggest you already have it. The only thing that you need to work on is elongating it. But if you wait until you have it together, because here's the thing, you might have a company, Catherine, that like they need you there for a half a day. And what you've already put together for that 4-hour time period, you're going to still have to make changes to it anyway, because they're going to be like, well, we're encompassing problems number 1, 2, and 3. We're having trouble with turnover. We're having trouble with, getting people to even come back. We're having trouble with, keeping HR people, and these are all things that you're going to have to add into your presentation and customize anyway. So I recommend put it out there. Hey, I'm doing this. I have you, because you have the shell of the presentation, because you're going to have to edit that anyway. So I wouldn't, that's kind of like a lot of people who are wanting to wait to make everything perfect. They want their website perfect. They want their presentation perfect. And a lot of those people, they never start because nothing will ever be perfect. So I would not recommend that. I would recommend going with what you have. And then when they're like, yeah, because honestly, you're not going to be giving that to them until the day you arrive to come in and train. Does that help? Does that make sense? I don't know if you want to unmute yourself or.
It just took me a minute. Yes. Oh. Thank you so much, Carrie. That helps a lot.
Okay. Okay. Good.
I appreciate that.
Good. Good. Does anyone else have any questions about writing a script or calling or concerns or anything? Because like I said, I'll go over rebuttals next time, but I would love to encourage all of you, write something up. You don't have to do it here on the phone call. You can always just email me your script. I'm happy to take a look at it and give you my feedback. But of course, if anybody ever wants to role play on the call, I'm happy to do that too. But don't feel like you're going to be put on the spot. But it is a good tool to have, before you call, because it happens to the best of us. When you get knocked off guard and I was making calls one time and I had something I dropped and I went to pick it up and this guy answered the phone and I guess he was just in a bad mood. He's like, yeah, what do you want? It threw me off and I'm like, click. So it just helps to have a script ready to go. something to refer to. Not that you have to read from it, but I think it helps. But if you feel like it's not going to help you and you just want to have like little bullet point list that, in front of you, I would say do that. There's no right or wrong answer here. It is, again, clearly what will work for you. And it won't matter just as long as you're doing it, and again, if you took 20 minutes a week out of your 3-hour time period that everybody's usually putting into follow up and applying for speaking engagements, if you did 30 minutes each week, that's going to add up over time. And you're going to, again, it just starts to put those leads in your pipeline, and you have people you can follow up with and move forward with. So I always strongly recommend that. But anybody else have any questions, just go ahead and you can unmute yourself. You can put them in chat if you feel more comfortable. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording really quick.